Welcome, everyone, to another expert interview with Elizabeth Kelly. I am your host for today. Well, I'm your host every day. Aren't you lucky? Anyways, today we are joined by Darcy Marler, who is an expert on land development. And I'm really excited to have you here as part of the conversation so that we can dig in a little deeper, because as a very smart man has been telling me for a while, land development is the next up and coming investment strategy. So thank you so much for joining us today, Darcy.
No worries. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, glad to have you. So a little bit more about Darcy before we dig into the questions. At the age of 15, Darcy was first introduced to the world of real estate investing, and he still loves finding great properties and deals and helping properties achieve their true potential. And Darcy started full-time investing in 2001. Since then, he's owned over 90 properties, 240 doors, worth over 44 million. And I got a pretty cool stat too when I was chatting with Darcy beforehand, and he told me he's had over 1,000 tenants in his lifetime as a landlord. So that's a pretty cool stat. I should go back and count and see how many I've had. So Darcy started with fix and flips and then moved into land development, new home construction, condo conversions, long-term rentals, and BRRRRs. Darcy also has expertise in accounting, negotiating, real estate law, project management, marketing, and financing. Whew, Darcy, you sound like you're a pretty smart guy.
I've been around a little bit. The hair tells you, the gray hairs will tell you that. So.
It's the attestation to the amount of knowledge you have in your head, right?
I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff.
Awesome. Well, we're super glad to have you here today and dive a little more into land development, because this is an area that I've wanted to learn a lot more about. And I love that we're going to sort of set the stage. We have a webinar coming up in July with a couple of other guests, and we're going to be doing kind of a panel type discussion talking about what that transition is like from going, from doing BRRRRs and flips and everything into basing more of our activities in land development. So what can you tell us about land development in terms of how it differs from other real estate strategies?
Sure. No, I think the biggest thing, the biggest misconceptions most people have with land development is just, the big boys on the outskirts of town, buying a few hundred acres, and over the next 10 years, they're going to phase in 1,000 lots. So everybody says, oh, well, that's not me. I can't do that. I found that there's micro strategies within land development that allow smaller and mid-sized investors, basically anybody with any budget, that can get involved with land development too, which is kind of cool. So strategies like, basically the equivalent of wholesaling, where you're just changing the zoning or the density of a property to increase its value. There's got land assembly, where you can buy 2 or 3 properties together and tear down the old house and get that ready for a builder to build a side-by-side townhouses or maybe an apartment building. There's a ton of pre-1950s homes that can be torn down. So if you find one on a 50-foot lot, you can tear that down, maybe build a fourplex or something in its place. So, and then there's, another option is to find some property that's got some excess land, sever off the excess, and then, you can still pay down the mortgage of the building that's left over, or you can sell that and move on to another project, or you can maybe tear down that house and do something with that. So, I mean, there's a ton of stuff within these micro strategies that allow normal investors to get involved, or maybe they didn't think they could before.
That's really cool. And it seems much more bite-sized than the idea of, okay, I want to be a land development, or I got to go, find 100 acres and build a compound. Like it, these kind of strategies are much more palatable, I think, for the average investor as a transition.
Yeah, you don't need, like the big boys, you don't need $30 million to go do this stuff. So,
yeah,
if you can, let's say, in the olden days, I think most of us, 90 to 95% of all investors are in rentals and flips, right? Like that's kind of all real estate education is.
Yeah.
You kind of twist your brain a little bit and say, well, what instead of trying to renovate that 1910s piece of crap, where I shouldn't, but there's so much competition in the flip and BRRRR world that I guess that's all I got. So I'll renovate that one. But if we do tear that down and do something new with it, right? It opens up an entire new landscape of other options you can do. You're not competing with your fellow flippers and rental landlords, because they don't really want that piece of property either. So you can typically get these properties at a lesser price. There's less competition. You can do more things with them. You can help the housing crisis that's out there. You know, we're all hearing that every day about how younger people can't afford stuff to buy and rent. So you can be part of that solution. Let the big boys do what they're going to do on the outskirts of town. But one lot at a time in the inner city, small and mid-sized investors like ourselves, we can do what we can to increase density and increase inventory, which is a really big thing. You've got this huge demand. The statistics are that Canada is short about 1.8 million building units, so houses and condos and whatever.
And it goes up every year.
And now you can be part of the supply. So typically in a business world, if you can meet supply or meet demand with supply, that means profit. So you can profit from this. So it's a really, really cool time. Like I said, I really do think land development, new construction are the next big things in real estate investing. Because of that, you've got immigration coming in. Our good prime minister just loves to open the doors. There's already a housing crisis. Where's everybody going to live?
Yeah,
that's the demand. The government's also giving benefits and bonuses to young couples for young people to try to find stuff. Well, all that's doing is increasing the demand. So again, how are we going to meet the supply? So tear down that old house. That's the secret. So,
yeah, and build 4 units in its place. That's the only way. Yeah,
it was really inefficient what we did in the 50s and 60s and all that. You know, there's small houses, you know, if you look at 1920s and 1930s houses, they were 800 square feet. They were basically just tiny shacks. They're old, they're nasty. I basically say anything pre-1960s can get torn down, but obviously exceptions for historical or architectural value houses. But you've got these small, tiny houses. I've renovated a ton of them. They've got no insulation. They got single pane glasses, aluminum wiring. Not nasty plumbing that's ready to rust out. So put them out of their misery and just tear them down instead of trying to renovate those puppies. And I was Mr. Renovated for years, right? I was always on the side of, no, fix that. No, I've gone 180 degrees now and said, let's tear those puppies down. So
that's so funny to think you used to be Mr. Renovate. Now you're Mr. Develop, Mr. Demo and Develop.
I was Mr. Nasty. Like I would specialize for the last few years, I was kind of specialist in BRRRRing multifamily, right? So my sweet spot was like 8 units to 16 unit houses. The nastier, the better. Grow ups, fire damage. You know, I had one with leaky roof that sat empty for 2 years that had mushrooms and grass growing on the carpet. Like I specialized in nasty. So
wow.
Now it's just why. I was driving around the other day and I saw this 1910 800 square foot shack, renovated, brand new shingles, and I'm why? Just why? No.
I think because the prices that we've been paying in the last couple of years for properties, they don't leave typically a lot of room for you to demo and build new versus, you know, what the ARV was on something like that.
Well, actually, I'm going to disagree with that because, like I said, a lot of times the flippers and the landlords don't want that. So you can get them typically cheaper. I always say if you can afford to buy that 1930s place as a flip or a rental, you can afford to buy it for one of these micro strategies because to tear it down is typically like, you know, $5,000 to $8,000. And to hook up one of the, let's say you take a 1930s building on a 50-foot lot, tear down the house, sever that lot into 2. The utilities are already there for one of the units because they went to the old house. All you have to do is put in the utilities to the new lot, and you can sell that. You don't have to build the fourplex. So that's another great thing about land development is you can just move the needle, right? You can just, like I said, change the zoning and density, sell that. You can then maybe tear down the old house, make sure both lots are serviced and sell that. If you want to go ahead and build something after that, you can. So you can get in and out, on and off the escalator, as I say, anytime you want. So that's very unique to land development because typically with a flip or a condo conversion, you have to finish before you can sell it for top dollar, right? This way you can get in and out. You know, people ask me all the time, but what about the cost of materials and labor and all that? How do you do that? And I said, don't do it. Just get the land ready, sell it to a builder, let them worry about material costs and trades.
Leave some meat on the bone for the next investor.
Excuse me.
So I kind of look at this and listening to you talk, there's two pieces that I see. One is being able to find and identify the opportunity within the property, to be able to look at, a listing or to have something come across your desk and go, yeah, I see the potential in this. This is the highest and best use. The second part is actually negotiating to purchase that property. Can you speak a little bit more to those two different kind of pieces, what they look like, what they feel like?
Yeah, so the first part, the finding, over 20 years, I've kind of become an expert at that. And basically, I'm a firm believer of opportunities are made, not found. So if you're just going to come into real estate investing, basically any strategy, and just hope that your realtor finds you a deal, you're going to be sorely mistaken. So you've got to find stuff. So one of the things I teach in my course is how to find stuff, and really smart ways to use the internet. There's some other tricks I use involving zoning and community plans and that kind of stuff, where we can hone in on specific areas within communities that are better able to find the second part, the highest and best use. So for example, let's say you can identify an area where the houses is still single family homes and they're currently zoned, single family or duplex, whatever, but the community and the city are open because of where they're located, that they're okay to have those as multifamily. Don't paddle upstream. If you can find those, you can be proactive. You can knock on doors. You can get your realtor to set up an alert for anytime something on that street comes up. So it can be an entire community. It can be a specific street where I know if I can find one of those houses that it's very easily, because the community is already on board for getting those into multifamily. So those are the kind of opportunities you're looking for. It all starts with the ability to kind of find opportunities and knowing how to do that.
Absolutely. Wow. And how would you then negotiate it? Like, I mean, I would think, let's say there's one of those little bungalows and it comes up in the community that you want. Is there not competition with people who want to do a BRRRR on it as well? And you're looking at it going, oh, I could sever this piece?
Less competition, because once you get to those really older, nasty things, less and less, even the BRRRR people, oh yeah, okay, no. So you hit that. So that's a good thing. And like I said, now you're going to be proactive. You're going to know about that place before it comes up on the market, right? So you're going to go door knocking on that place earlier. And then also, you can do some of the creative strategies. The idea is that you just control the land and not buy it while you're going through the 4 to 6 or 10 month application stage. And so agreements for sale or options, or maybe partnering with the seller, those are some of the things that you can do to really keep your money down, keep your money in your pocket, as opposed to just buying it. The last thing you want to do is buy the land and then try for the application, don't get it. Now you're stuck with the land, right? So,
yeah,
so there's ways to get in without spending a lot of money. So.
Wow. That's really cool to hear about these different strategies. Sorry, just asking another question here. So I think we get a kind of a sense of why you love it so much. Can you talk to us about any other benefits and how you arrived at this strategy from the other ones? Like you mentioned 1,000 tenants. That's a lot of tenants.
Not all at once.
No. Could you imagine all at once?
Oh my God, yeah. So I basically, I don't know if I had attention deficit or what, but I basically, I didn't focus. I've learned the value of focus in my later years. So I would kind of pick the next project based on what the possibility to make a profit was. So that was my why. I just wanted to be rich, which is a horrible why, as it turns out. But I learned all these skills and did all this stuff. So that's great. So why I settled on land development was I didn't like the landlording part, but I did it for the money. And I didn't like, on the project side of my business, the flips, the condo conversions, the new construction. Somebody told me years ago, what are you doing? Giving up 10 to 12% of the profits by hiring a general contractor to do this stuff. You should be doing that yourself. And okay. So I went ahead and did that. I consider myself a pretty smart guy. I don't know why it took me 18 years to figure out. I don't like being the on-site manager guy. Why am I being the on-site manager? But whatever. So I kind of did a step back a few years ago and said, no, I hate this stuff. So why am I doing it? So I sold all my rentals. I'm right out of rentals now. And then on my project side, I delegate the stuff I don't want to do, right? And so that brought me back even further to, I love land development, new construction, just because I love to be creative. I love to hunt. I like to design. Kind of a nerd even on the land development side. If I am doing a raw land deal, I like to sit there with the civil engineer and figure out where the rain's going to go when it rains, right? Like, so I like that kind of stuff. But the other great thing I love about this too is the ability to just move the needle and just do part of it. So you don't have to do the whole build and the whole BRRRR and the whole reno. But the reality is these micro strategies can give you, there's a potential to make a lot more profit per project than you can on an individual flip. So it takes 2 or 3 flips to kind of make the profit from one of these land development micro strategies. But the other thing is, because your team's doing most of the work, your individual time is much less. It takes a ton of time to do a BRRRR, right? Like, you're down at the site every day, you're getting your crew figured out. Oh, drywaller didn't show up today, but I got to go get materials at Home Depot or whatever. I physically went to Home Depot at least once or twice a day, every day for 18 years, and at least once on the weekend too. Right?
That's tiring. They must have known you by name. They would have had like a party for you every year. And
I added it up, all my BRRRRs and whatever. I spent over $23 million in my life of material costs. But anyway, but yeah,
you are a bit of a numbers guy, eh?
Yeah. Well, I've done everything, right? So it is what it is. So, but the great thing about land development is you're busy up front. So you're finding the areas that are best to invest in. You're putting your team together. You're finding the deals. You're doing that kind of up front. Once it gets to the stage where you're doing the design and back and forth with the city, your team's doing that. Your planners, engineers, they're working it through to get the approval. Then you sit there, and if you're doing one of the strategies, it's actually doing work on site. Your team's doing that. Your civil engineer is going to manage that. So really, from a time perspective, as an investor, much, much, much less. So your return on time is huge. More money coming in, less time. So buy back your life. If you're one of these people that is at Home Depot or Lowe's twice a day, like, seriously think about this other world. It's a big deal. So anyway, but you can see the passion too. I love that. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah, so. That's awesome. Well, you've got to be passionate about it if you wrote a whole course on it. Plus you got a book and you got some other stuff too. So obviously you really believe in this. And, in the investor community, it's great to have someone like you who's an expert come back in and kind of teach us the ropes and how to do this. I would imagine there's a certain kind of mindset required. Like, how did you make that transition mentally? Were you tired and exhausted and you kind of found land development and you got really passionate again? How did you know this was the right strategy for you at that time? I kind of had a come to Jesus moment where I was just sad all the, like went through kind of real deep depression a few years ago. And like, why am I so unhappy? Well, it's because I was doing stuff that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be the landlord. I didn't want to be the on-site guy, right? So I sat back, took a look, what's my why? Well, I want to be fulfilled. I want to learn. Like, I really love to learn. I want to be creative. So I want to design stuff. Okay. So that eliminates, I actually did a spreadsheet. So here's all the different strategies, anything to do with rentals and rent to own and Airbnb. Like, I've made a list of everything. Okay. What do you want? Okay. I don't want to be involved, at 55 and, investing in Alberta where it's up and down. One of the things you learn is get in and out quick, right? So I no longer want to be involved in an 8-year JV in an apartment building, right? So in and out quick, no tenants. So I made a list of everything I want and then just X'd out everything I didn't want. And it became pretty clear pretty quickly that, anything to do with rentals just had a big X by it. And just the land development and construction. Okay, but Darcy, make the internal switch in your head. Don't be the on-site guy. So delegate that. So, so that's kind of, was just, like I said, a nice little spreadsheet, very, very objective, but it's really worked out for you. And you really touched on something there. I think a lot of us as human beings spend a lot of time being unconscious. And, we look at social media and we look at what it looks like successful people are doing. And we say, oh, they're doing this and they're successful. They do this and they have a Ferrari. They do this and they have a big house. And we assume that when we get those things that we're going to feel fulfilled. And I think the reality is a lot of us, myself included, when I started investing almost 20 years ago and we were buying, multi-unit apartment buildings, I don't think we fully understood what we were signing up for. And, a little while ago, I kind of looked at my husband and I'm like, are you happy? And he kind of went, yeah, I'm happy. And I'm like, oh,
I'm not. Okay, this is awesome. This is an opportunity to go out and to design the next part of my life. And it sounds like you kind of went through that same transition too, where I realized that we had our financial freedom, but I didn't have my time freedom. And I think one of the things people don't talk enough about is that as real estate investors, we become entrepreneurs. And there's definitely entrepreneurs face more depression, and they have greater, kind of mental health issues around, loneliness and feeling isolated and feeling burned out than a lot of other professions. And it's really nice to hear someone like you be so honest about, what, I realized I was unhappy and I decided it was time to make a change. And I actually found the thing in my life that I am so passionate about. But that whole process starts from being really honest and asking yourself the right questions.
And the other part about that is, in the bio, you said, I've since the age of 15. I got my first book about real estate investing given to me when I was 15. So that's the early 80s, right? So everything was buy real estate, no money down, late night infomercials, the whole bit. Anyway, but what I've noticed in 40 years of watching the real estate education industry is that, like I said, 90 to 95% of it is flips and rentals. And I'm a guru now too, so I guess I can't talk too much, but we all have books to sell. We all have courses. We all, so what are you going to do? You're going to do flips or rentals? Come on, make a decision. Come on. What we end up doing is we pick the strategy first. We pick the how first instead of the why. So we don't take a look at ourselves. Like I said, my why was I wanted to be rich. Well, that's a pretty crappy why, as it turns out. So who are you? What do you want to do? Like, are you looking for long-term? Are you looking for short-term? What kind of personality do you have? What do you like? What do you dislike? What are you good at? What are you not good at? What do you want to delegate? What do you want to do yourself? Do you have an operational partner? Could be your spouse, could be somebody else. So what are you good at? What are they good at? What can you delegate? So, if somebody had said to me, I don't know if 2022 Darcy, going back to 2001 Darcy, I don't know if 2001 Darcy would have listened, but 2010 Darcy would have listened for sure. And Darcy, you don't like this stuff. Why are you doing it? Like, just stop. Like, don't go to, you don't like being on site every day. I was never, my dad was really good at fixing stuff. I never was. So he would actually get a real smile on his face to know that I was at Rona twice a day. Like, he'd laugh at that. And I, I'm not that guy. So don't be that guy. Figure out who you are, figure out your strategy second, figure out your who and who you are and what your why is first. And then I think we do it backwards. Unfortunately, as an industry, I don't think we do that right.
I think that that's such a great tip, because I think a lot of people too, as newer investors starting out, land development is sort of viewed as a strategy that you do when you have years of experience behind you. It's typically viewed as, extremely complicated, very labor intensive, financing heavy. And it's really refreshing to hear kind of this perspective that, land development can be done by newer investors. I think if you just educate yourself properly on what to look for. Can you talk to us a little bit about sort of what the risks are with land development and how do we mitigate risk with it as a strategy?
Yeah. So, what are the risks of staying where you are doing what you're doing if you don't like it, right? But anyway, so what's the cost of that? But anyway, so the micro strategies we talked about, so knock down old house, sever it into two, make sure both are serviced and move on. So the cost of that to buy the house is the same as a flip or rental, as I said. $5,000 to knock down the house. Depends where you are in the country, probably 15 to 30,000 per site service. Throw on 5 or 10,000 for planning and engineering, and so you're 25 to 50 per lot. So that's in line with the rental, right? So like I said, if you can buy that as a flip or rental, you can do land development. It doesn't take much of anything to buy a property that's got excess land, sever the excess. Like, that's $5,000 with a surveyor, right? Like, so how do you do that? So I teach you that, but it's very, very low. I think, land assembly, same thing. So the benefit of doing all this, like I said, you can get in and out. And what I kind of teach in the course is don't spend more money than you have to before you need to, right? So what I mean by that is, You find a property. So I find it, I teach you how to look in the right communities. And so here's a community near me that looks like it's got some potential. So now you're starting to look specifically there. You find a parcel. Okay, well, you don't own the land yet. It could be sold out at any time. So some quick and dirty back and napkin kind of stuff. What does this look like in terms of what can I do with it, re-renting, whatever, or knocking it down and zoning it or re-rent. That comes up to what I call decision point A. You interrupt. If you go past decision point A, well, now you need to spend a little bit of money on engineering to get a site plan done, or some high level numbers, whatever. You're going to have to spend a little money. Well, you can't spend money if you don't control it. So how are you going to control the land? You know, like we said, agreements for sale or some of these other things. So now I can control it. Let's say I've got 6 months to figure out what I need to do. So now I hire an engineer or planner. Now I get a piece of paper with site plan on it. So this is what, this is what it's going to look like. Now I can get some higher level costs on that, lower level costs, I guess. Better revenue numbers. I can actually now have a piece of paper, a drawing that I can take to potential lenders, potential equity partners, to the city, to the community, to kind of sell my vision. Here's what I'm thinking. Are you guys on board with that? So I use the analogy of up to decision point A is you're in the water up to your ankles. Now you're up to your knees. You hit decision point B. You've got some tighter numbers. Does it look good? Okay, am I going to go in all in? Okay, now at that point, now you can spend the money to finish the drawings, to do the phase 1 environmentals, to do all the stuff, right? So you really keep the money you're spending to a minimum until you get more and more comfortable. So once you're up to your knees, you decide to go in. Okay, now you can deep dive and spend the soft costs, budget your reports and blueprints and all that. Now your team's doing the back and forth with the city to get approval. Now you've got approval. Now if you're doing one of the strategies, it's actually involves being on site. Now you're going to spend the hard cost, which is any money that's physically spent on site. So that's the other great thing too, is you can kind of ease into it, which isn't necessarily possible with the other strategies too. Like once you're committed to buying that house as a flip, that's the money. Like unless you decide to pull back on the scope midway through,
yeah,
you're going to spend that money. Here you can ease into it. So in that way, it's a lot easier for people with smaller budgets too. And if you're just doing like the changing of zoning and density, you've got to tie up the land, and then it's just whatever it's costing you, a few $1,000s for the engineers. Like it's really low capital overhead at that point too, right? So again, all these strategies are really good for newer or investors with smaller and mid-sized budgets to get into as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about financing. How does that work on land development? I mean, we've sort of talked about, not having to commit that much money and, being able to be strategic with your timelines, but what would we potentially be looking at? What should we be budgeting when we're looking at a potential piece of property, and how does financing work?
Financing, it depends. Like if you're doing one of the strategies where you're physically not doing stuff on site, it's basically just tying up the land and some engineering or surveying fees. So it's a lot easier that way. If you're doing something that's actually knocking down the house and putting in utilities or whatever, or if you're doing land development, 5 acres or whatever, you're physically building an internal road and all that. The way it works is basically you can, the banks, before they do a construction loan, is typically going to want to 25 to 30% down, and your money has to go in before they'll lend. So basically, and they won't lend any of their money until you've got permits in place. So you're upfronting all that cost to get there. So that means typically you're either buying the land 100%, typically that'll take you past that 25 to 30%, or you can go 50-50 on the land, cash and loan. And then when you're actually ready to work on site, you have to spend a little bit more of your money before you hit that 25 or 30% threshold. But it's a little different in that respect. The other thing I can tell you is there are fewer lenders and fewer equity partners that kind of get into this. So it's really, really important that part of your team is a really good mortgage broker that understands this world too, that knows the players. But there are people that definitely specialize in that as well. So they can, if you're to that level where you're actually doing work on site, there's good mortgage brokers can help with that as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So there's no like preferred lender, there's no like credit union that'll kind of is particularly amenable to land developments. It sounds like, work with a mortgage broker for stuff you can't get, through a traditional bank, then you're probably going private money at that point.
Well, there's I wouldn't say banks never do it, but it's different. So, banks are typically amenable if you're gonna build a house for yourself to live in. They do construction draws for that. As an investment, you're typically dealing in kind of the second tier, mercantile banks or mix or private lenders, as you say. And then as far as equity partners, what I've noticed in 20 years is that different people like different stuff, right? So some people only invest in multifamily, some only do new builds, some only invest in, Alberta, some only invest in Texas, so people with money kind of have their specific needs and wants. And, some want to have an equity piece, some want to just get paid interest. So part of finding funding for any strategy, not just land development, is to find the people that like this world and
that are the right fit for this deal. Yeah,
and that makes fits, like I said, for any strategy.
That makes a lot of sense. Tell us a little bit about where you're investing now and what you're kind of up to. Like, what excites you these days? I'm assuming that a little severance doesn't doesn't get you out of bed and excited in the morning.
I'm so personally, yeah. So I do raw land development. I'm in that 5 to 10 acre world, actually, subdividing, building an internal road, putting internal servicing to all of the plots, So I like that. Like I said, I like the creative part of it, designing where the road's going to go and which lot is what size and where the rain's going to go. I love that stuff. But now I actually delegate the on-site stuff. And one of the cool things with the course, we have like a 5-week challenge, and where within 5 weeks you're going to find a property of land and make an offer on it. And just for kicks and giggles, I signed up too, right? So I'm in Calgary, so yeah. So I'm last Saturday I was on the internet doing the things, teaching what I preach or learning whatever, taking advantage of what I preach. And I was on the internet looking for specific sites the way I teach, and had a list of about 20 maybes. And I went, took a couple hours and drove around Calgary looking at all the sites, narrowed that down to about 4, and got on the phone with some various people that are looking to invest. And so, yeah, so we're actually looking to do that. So I'm at the stage on that, again, different micro strategies. So I'm looking, one of the things I teach is that, what's the value of the lift in that changing zoning and density, for example. So if it's zoned single family home, and is there value in making it multifamily? Usually. Well, if it's already zoned multifamily, there's really no lift there. The benefit for that is it's quicker to build, right? Because you bypassed all the changing zoning part. So the benefit there is to build. So my partner is looking to build an apartment building, right? So I was looking for specific zoning codes within Calgary that are amenable to that. So I was looking for specific pieces of dirt where it's a very low threshold to get to the point, the quick development permit application, and now you can physically get on site and start to build. So again, where you are in your development, what you want to do for the micro strategy, what makes you get out of bed in the morning. There's a different strategy for everybody, and that's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, so I can look for opportunities where there's a lift in the zoning, or I can get stuff that's already zoned properly and just go straight on into building, because you don't really want to do both. You don't want to take 6 to 8 months to figure out, to get your application approved, and then now you're another whatever, right? You're kind of, I've done that, and it's hard, right? Like it takes a long time to do both. So kind of pick a lane. Either you're just doing the land part or you're doing the build part, and go for it.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting. And I'm sure there's a lot more to know when you're doing the build.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of back to managing contractors. And these days, I don't know about you, I find it's incredibly difficult to find contractors who know what they're doing, consistently show up at the job site every day, and don't charge an absolutely exorbitant fee. Like in my world, you kind of get like reliable, or you get skilled, or you get finance like reasonably priced, and you might get 2 of the 3 and you're doing really well, but getting the trifecta is virtually impossible these days.
I have a joke with the same thing with lawyers. I've dealt with a ton of lawyers over my time, right? And so I've always tried to find them that was reasonably priced,
Yeah.
that knew what they were doing,
Yeah.
and that you would be good to go for a beer with, right? They were nice people, and I've never
Yeah.
found anybody that was 3 out of 3 in the lawyer world either. Not a dig at lawyers, but so again, a couple of things. I get asked that all the time. Well, Darcy, what about, I don't want to build here because it's crazy material costs and wood's crazy and all this stuff. And I say, okay, well, don't. Move the needle, just do the land bit, sell to a builder, let them worry about, I remember this one framing crew I had, and every morning at 8 o'clock, they'd be there in their car, 8 o'clock, the doors would open and the smoke would just pile out right from the pot, right? So that's how they started their day. Okay, good. If it was too bad, okay, no heavy tools today, boys. But anyway, and if you want to do that, then I would say, again, my in and out quick. Don't be the on-site supervisor. I say, if you're listening to this podcast today, you're an investor, right? So don't do the on-site work. Don't be the on-site manager. Partner with a builder, whether that means just hiring a builder, or maybe that's part of your strategy too, is to actually partner with the builder. And then just let them worry about that, right? So get references. We talk about in the course how to build a team and all that. So what do you look for? What are the questions you ask for when you're trying to hire a builder? But that's part of the part of delegate, right? Like, I don't want to do that anymore. So, and that's what I recommend to most people listening to, is be an investor. Because really, I called myself a full-time investor for 20 years, but really, if you look at it, what I was doing was I was just buying a job, right? So the next 6 months, I'm going to be doing this BRRRR, or I'm going to be doing this new construction project. Really, I'm just buying myself a job if I'm on site all day, every day, right? You're buying a job. If you're an investor, lift yourself up a couple levels and then manage the money, manage the team, manage the project, find the next deal. Your time and energy is much more better spent, much more valuable finding the next opportunity, right? As opposed to physically wondering if drywall guy is going to show up today, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's nice not to have to worry about that anymore. Tell us about either your favorite deal or your best deal, because they're not necessarily the same thing, but tell us kind of high level about either your best deal or your favorite deal that you've done.
My favorite deal, I was actually instrumental in getting the new racetrack and casino, the horse track and casino, built in Calgary. So early 2000s, a bunch of people got together and they were tired of the old Stampede Park here in Calgary. So we needed a new track and money was good. So a bunch of them invested and bought some land just outside the city limits. If you know Calgary at all, it's that new Cross Iron Mills area, just north of town. And so the hubris, I wasn't involved yet, but we got to have a major, actually they got in touch with the world's #1 racetrack designer, and who knew there was such a thing, but this guy out of Philadelphia was the best.
How is that a job?
Oh, you can't just build a racetrack. You got to have a mall. You got to have residential, so it ballooned into a massive thing. So wow. We put an option on 700 acres of land. We partnered with Ivanhoe Cambridge to do them all and whatever. So, and then the recession of 07, 08 hit, right? And so everything just kind of cranked. So it, ended up in 09, this group that was doing this ended up in creditor protection, right? And so they brought me in to kind of turn it around, and then also to help them get out of credit protection. So it took 6 years, but basically I was able to find a new group, Century Gaming out of Austria, and they came in and did that. We did we sold the land and leased it back to be able to afford that. We were $100 million in debt to start, and I had to get that down to 20. And then we partnered with Century Gaming to build that. So that was a really, really cool project. So now if you actually, I cried the day, the first day that I saw horses run around the track.
That's amazing. And to have bought, it's not even like you were starting at zero, like you were starting at negative $100 million.
Yeah.
And then to get it to that point, like that's a tremendous accomplishment. That's a legacy move is what that is, Darcy.
And that was, if that hadn't worked, there'd be no horse racing in Alberta right now. So we were actually trying to save an industry at the same time too, right? So that's kind of what motivated you to get out of bed every day, was, I gotta save this industry. But it was hard. It took there was a lot of no's, because the other thing too is nobody else new wants to invest if it's that bad in the hole, right? So you ended up doing deals with all the creditors, because we started to build and then kind of ran out of money. So, all the land that we owned, there was creditors 5 deep on title, right? So you got to work out deals with each group, and you're trading land for this, and you're trading, well, if I give you this, so they actually had built 6 of these ultra modern they built the horse barns first. I don't know why, but they were concrete tilt ups, right? They're $2 million each, right? Because the thing was, these Saudi Arabian sheiks with these multi-million-dollar horses were going to come to this track. It was the actual grandstand itself was going to have like a massive theater in it, like Caesar's Palace, for Cher and Barbara Streisand were going to show up. We were talking to the Flames at one point that their new the new rink was going to be out in that area as well, and so there were some big ass plans, right? But anyway, so shit hits the rubber hits the road, and I got to get rid of these barns because they're right in the middle of where the new track's going to be. I got a quote. It was $2 million just to demolish them and throw them in a dump. I didn't have any money. So I did a trade. There's a local, there's a religious group out here called the Hutterites, which is kind of like the Amish or Mennonites, those kind of groups.
Yeah.
They're all over, they love technology. But anyway, so I did a deal where I basically sold each one of the barns for $1 to a different colony. And they came in with the big picker trucks and the big hoists and the big trucks, and they disassembled them and took them off site. And so for $1, I got rid of my problem. So that was kind of some of the stuff I had to do to get.
Wow. And it's crazy, like for so many of us to think, okay, it cost us $2 million to build this, and now we're paying somebody to cart it away. I mean, so many people would look at that, and that would be where they would stop dead in their tracks. They wouldn't get out of bed in the morning after that.
Creativity. It's all about creativity. Even and most part of land development, right? I teach, let's say you go up to that 1930s house, what am I going to do with it? Well, I talk about out with the old, in with the new, right? So out with the old is what's there now that doesn't meet my new vision. I got rid of the house, probably garage, concrete basement. I got driveways, I got whatever. So that's out with the old. And then in with the new, what do I need to get it ready for a builder? Probably some servicing, maybe a retaining wall, maybe some fencing, whatever, right? So if you break it down into sizable chunks like that, it's very easy. It's much easier psychologically to get your head around it. And then out with the old, in with the new also translates very easily to a to-do list. So it's just now it's step by step by step. What do I have to do? So in that pre-decision point A, I was talking about, okay, well, I got to demolish the old house. So I call a building demolisher guy. And okay, now it's going to be, instead of an old one house, it's going to be now a new fourplex. So I call the utility companies, what's it going to cost to make that? And so it's just a step by step. So make it easier in your head psychologically by kind of breaking it down into smaller chunks like that. Just kind of some advice I give there. One of my top tips.
That's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Darcy, and for allowing us to dig a little bit deeper into kind of the world of land development. You've mentioned your course a couple of times. I have a couple of my clients who have actually taken the course and they absolutely loved it. They're now well into their first, second, third deals in terms of land development. So they've definitely found the transition really easy. And we'll make sure we include information on the course in the notes from our call today. And looking forward to seeing you again in just a couple of weeks when you and Paula McFarlane and Jake Taylor and I will dive a little bit more into looking at things from the transition perspective. How does an investor know when it's time to let go of what they're doing right now and move on to something else? So thank you so much for your time, Darcy. It's been such a pleasure to connect with you again.
Well, if you're me, and when is the time? It's when you're sitting on your couch, sucking your thumb in the fetal position, that maybe it's time to switch. You don't have to get to that point.
Yeah, we wouldn't wish that on anyone. Although I think we've all probably been there as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a pleasure. I love talking about this stuff, as you could tell. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. And next time in Alberta, I'm gonna look you up, and I want you to tour me around and show me all the stuff you've built and done.
I've got the tour. I've got a prepackaged tour. It takes an hour. It's all good. So,
oh, that's exciting. Thank you so much, Darcy. Take care. See you again soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Elizabeth. Take care.